Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, and I am so glad to be joined by my friend Bob Stewart, back from vacation. Bob Stewart, how are you?
Chad, I'm refreshed. I've got a little tan, a little glow. I don't know if you can see this. I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Bob. Nobody goes on vacation more than you.
Where's Ben right now, by the way?
Fun. And Ben
Where's
and I
Ben?
might make a little...
I think he's on vacation.
He's never on vacation. He just stands us up. But he knows that we've got great content here at Win, Make, Give. And Bob, look, we know you go on vacation, which is an important thing. I mean, when you sit down to build your calendar for the next year, folks, the first thing that should go on that calendar are vacations. Because if you don't block them, you don't take them. Bob, give us, for example, how long ago did you plan this vacation?
Oh, the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys said it's going to happen.
Yeah. And then I kept my fingers crossed that it was actually going to happen. It was actually a little bit after that. I think we planned it in February.
Okay. So folks, we want you to understand the value of planning this because it helps you avoid the topic that we have on today's call. And that topic, Bob, is
burnout.
Okay. So what is burnout, Bob? Talk to our audience a little. Define burnout for us.
I think burnout's it's fatigue, frustration, and really apathy resulting from prolonged stress, overwork, or intense activity, right? Yep. And it's this idea that it doesn't just happen. I don't wake up one day and I'm burned out. This happens over a longer period of time. You get stressed out in a day, Chad, right?
Yep.
But you get burned out over a long period of time. From overwork or just prolonged stress. But I think it really is this idea of it's prolonged.
Got it. Yeah. And by planning your vacations, Bob, you're doing a great job of one of the tips we'll give later, and that's how to avoid burnout. Now, wait, we talk about winners on Win, Make, Give. So why are we talking about burnout? Because we know that even winners experience burnout, but being ready for it and how to deal with it is what really makes a winner a winner. And that's someone like you, Bob. We might make fun of you, but that's someone like you who plans to be gone so that as burnout maybe is starting to set in from something, you have those breaks already planned in your schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's something to the vacation, but I think there's also inside of a day, there's something to having those little breaks. And we've talked about this before on the show, Chad, that idea that elite athletes practice for an hour and a half and then rest for a while. Right. Or so this is burnouts. You're not necessarily going to burn out in a day, but daily breaks, having a little bit of me time in a week, getting away for a weekend each month or having some family time each month. And then obviously in a year having some vacations. So there's, the time frames matter, right? You're taking shorter breaks in a day, then you're taking in a week, then you're taking in a month, then you're taking in a year. But burnout, it can happen at any point, I think. And you should always kind of be preparing yourself to not let it.
Yeah. That's great. And you said this earlier already, not that there's much earlier in this podcast. We're still so early into it. But you said that stress is not burnout, right? Stress is maybe something temporary. Stress is short term. And as soon as the stress is gone, whatever that stress was, your energy usually returns. But you had said that burnout is one of those things that happens over time. Kind of you go through the motion, doing the same things. That's probably you fighting that burning out feeling.
I think that for me, I know when I'm starting to burn out, which is exactly what you just said. When I'm starting to go through the motions, Chad, when I'm just I'm mailing it in, I'm not, a lot of us have jobs, routines that where it's a lot of times we are consistently doing similar things.
Yes.
Right. I do I train some teams, and it's a very similar kind of there's a routine to that thing. But I know I can get off a call and I know when I mailed it in, and I think a lot of us, if we were being really objective with ourselves, would be able to sit back and go, you know what, I put everything I had into that, and I had energy in that call. I had, I was there, I was engaged, I was and if we were being honest, we could look at other times and go, yeah, I kind of mailed that one in. And
Sure.
and for me, that's one of the first signs that I'm starting to burn out is when I start to mail it in. Because I still do the activity, right? And winners are always going to do the activity. But it's when you start to maybe not be as motivated by it, you don't get any energy out of it, right? It's on the
Yep.
horizon if you're not already into it.
Yeah, I think, and we're going to go over a list here. We love our lists at Win Make Give. We're going to go over a list that are kind of some warning signs. One of the things that's not really on that list, Bob, that I think kind of sums up what you just said is when you start to feel the passion leaving,
Yeah.
right? So when you start to not be passionate about what you're doing, you might be on that path. So maybe that's like point 0.5 on our list here as I throw that one in. But we did some research on this, Bob, knowing that we put this episode together in your honor. We did some research on the warning signs of burnout. So give me one of those warning signs of burnout.
Low energy and limited interest.
Yeah.
I think, and that's, you called, when you start to lose the passion as 0.5. I mean, that's what happens when you start to lose the passion is you're low energy. You're not, you should be interested. You don't really care as much, but low energy and limited interest.
Okay, I'll give you one, Bob. How about when you start pulling away emotionally from those people that you work with, right? It's those people you usually have the jokes with, those people you usually hang out and talk to or have that energy with. And then all of a sudden you start to pull away from it and I don't want to be there and I don't want to share with you as much. When you start to pull away emotionally from clients and coworkers and gosh, even your family at home, there's probably some burnout that's kicking in somewhere.
It was funny. That's like exactly how I was feeling like a week and a half ago.
Tell us a little more.
Well,
Let us into Bob's world.
I think of Josiah as one of my coworkers. I spend a lot of time talking to. It became a more like clinical interaction with him, right? It'd be like, yep. Josiah, I need something. Hey, thanks. Bye. Whereas like normally he and I are, hey, how's it going? It's how's the baby? It's there's just a little bit more depth to that relationship. But when you start to get burned out, like, I think I realize, look, and I'm like far from like the optimal human, Chad, right? Far from it. But you start to realize like I've only got so much energy. And when I'm starting to burn out, like for me, that energy is going to my wife and my kids, right? If I've even got it left to give to them. But you start to realize like, I can't, like, I love Josiah. He's a friend. He's an amazing colleague. But like you start to realize I've only got so much energy. And so Josiah doesn't really get much of it, right? Our clients don't really get much of it. We start to just kind of pull away, and it's not rude. You're not being rude. You're not being, it's just, but I think we all know when we start to reach that point, especially in starting to pull away from people that we would have been more jovial and friendly around before.
Yep. Absolutely. Give me another one of these warning signs, Bob. We want people to be watching for these out there. So give me another warning sign or two.
How about you start to just feel a little bit empty, right? You start to like think like, why am I even doing this? Or man, like nothing I'm doing around here is satisfying me, right? Just I'm feeling a little bit empty. You ever get that little bit of empty feeling, Chad?
Yeah, it happens. I think, Bob, the next thing on our list kind of ties to that with me, which is thinking that what I'm doing is just no longer making a difference. I think that leaves me with that empty feeling, right? That I'm like, is what I'm doing, does this matter?
Yeah.
Like if I'm recording these podcasts, is anybody really listening? Right? Is anybody taking anything from these and saying, wow, I'm doing something, I'm going to share this episode because, wow, that was impactful, or they take something and they change something in their lives? When you start to think that what you're doing no longer makes a difference, that's how I get that empty feeling. So for me, it's absolutely that experience that comes from it.
The next one on the list is definitely something that I've experienced in my career. It doesn't happen to me very often anymore, but that like dreading to going to work and just looking at the clock and waiting for that thing to hit 5 o'clock and just being ready to just get right out of there and leave.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think
and when you get there, Bob, you got a negative attitude too, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look, if we know that burnout is this, it's it's fatigue essentially is what it is, right?
Yes.
From like a prolonged stress or overworking, or it makes a lot of sense that these are the signs of it. Like
Yeah.
when I'm fatigued, like I don't want to be a happy guy.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And the last one on this list, Bob, this is one that uh, Nita knows about me very well, and it's thinking of making a change in work or something like that to find a new energy. And she's been with me long enough that after about 3 years, maybe two, she looks at me and says, "So are you about to change jobs?" Because she knows I get to a burned out stage where I came into it and I was a manager in an office, and I had about 2 years of it, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. I've hit the goals I needed to hit. I feel I'm done. There's nothing left for me. I'm feeling empty. I'm feeling that I'm not making a difference anymore. I'm starting to pull away from those people. Then I went to another job, and she's like, okay, you're starting to be that way again. Are you done? And are you done? And you know, folks, watch for those routines in your life. There are a lot of times every 2 or 3 years that I'm going through that. I want to make a change because I have hit that wall and burnout has kicked in because it's that prolonged monotony of whatever it is that I'm doing, which is why I love what I'm doing now, because there's absolutely no monotony to trying to gather like you and Ben and stuff together to get these podcasts done. There's tons of fun to this and the other things I get to do. So,
I think a lot of us, if we're lucky, have somebody around us that helps us spot these things as they're starting to come up.
yeah, that's a great
you
point.
have Nita. I've got my wife, Erin. Ben is another person in our world that he's constantly watching for this kind of thing. Like I feel like he's such a great leader that he's always like he just always asks you or suggests that you take a weekend, or he's got that little house up in Bellingham he's always trying to get me to come stay at, but he does it at the right times. Like he
Yep.
can just sense that maybe I'm pulling away a little bit, or maybe him and I haven't had one of our 11 p.m. calls once a week like we normally do. And so a lot of times you can have people around you that can kind of shake you to realize what's starting to happen to you.
That's a great point, Bob. That's a great point, having people around you that are watching for it. So let's talk about some reasons. I'm going to give you 4 reasons, Bob, that burnout shows up, right? We just went over some signs to watch for, but here's why it might show up. 1, maybe you get no support or no recognition. So you're starting to get to that point of, nobody cares about what I do and I'm not making a difference because you're not getting that support.
You know what, real quick on that one, you familiar with the love languages, right?
Of course.
Like some
Yep.
people's love language is words of encouragement. And so if you're not getting that, you're not getting the recognition, or you feel like, and support would maybe be something different than recognition, but if you're that will empty certain people will be emptied, their tank will be emptied by that, Chad. Like
That's
that will
right.
be a real quick way for them to burn out, is if they look around and they're like, man, nobody's even paying attention to what I'm doing. Like nobody even cares about what I'm doing here. Like, why am I doing this? All of a sudden you start to feel empty, right? So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's absolutely one that can
Brings
happen.
burnout into our world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So will having no finish line or no goal that you're working towards, right? It doesn't mean you have to have some world altering goal. Doesn't mean you have to have I'm going to have $1 million in the bank goal, but something that says I have a finish line or a goal. And Bob, for you, even that might be that I've got this trip coming up. So I know there's a finish line. I just have to make it till this date, because then I've got this vacation that I'm working towards.
Look, I would imagine I've I don't want to say been fortunate, because I haven't had the other side of it, the coin, to know if but like, a lot of jobs that have just a lot of routine in them, right?
Yeah.
You're a mailman or something, right? Where it's like you do the same mail route every day. Like
Yep.
I would like, what's the finish line in that job? The mail never stops, buddy, right?
Correct.
So in a job like that, like a vacation would absolutely be that goal. And again, I've been fortunate to have a career where I feel like every day I wake up and there's a new adventure, a new challenge, or there could be if I wanted it. But man, I think a lot of people out there have jobs where you gotta find that thing, right? Like you said, a vacation that's like, man, I'm doing this. I do it every day. Why? So that we can get away with our family and enjoy these 2 weeks that we're going to take off or whatever it is.
2 weeks. Oh my gosh. We
I
can't
don't know. I
afford you
just
for that long, Bob.
There's a
Get back here.
mailman. They work for the government. I assume they got like lots of time off. No, that's not the case.
I have no idea. I've never worked for our government and don't plan to. I pay their salaries, I guess, through my, but that's a different podcast topic, Bob. All right. So maybe we're working in the wrong environment. That'll bring burnout quite quickly because, as we said, emotionally pulling away from if you're in the wrong environment, you're never going to even emotionally plug in the first place. Right. And then doing work that doesn't stimulate you. And that's where you're saying, and God bless our mail carriers or people who are working on assembly lines and things like that. But how do you find something that stimulates you doing your job? Because that's one of the things that'll keep you from burning out. If you don't have to use any brain cells, you're in trouble.
I don't know why. I didn't plan this. I'm going to go back to the mail. I used to have a mail carrier that every time the dude would come up to my door to like drop, because most of the time they're just dropping stuff in the mailbox, but every once in a while they'll come up and drop something at your door. He'd have his headphones in, Chad, and he would like dance up to the door. And like, I don't have any question that like this guy like just found passion in music. Yep. Right. And so like, even though he was in this like work environment that wasn't necessarily stimulating him, he just decided like, I'm going to find some way to stimulate myself. And for him, that was music. And I'd bet like my last dollar that guy doesn't burn out. Like he just, look, maybe I'm wrong, but he just looked like such a happy guy. And I got to know him over the years living in the same house. But he'd dance right up to the door. You can see me. I'm like dancing right now.
Yes, you are. I'm watching you dance as you're saying this. Good thing your microphone's attached to you and coming with you, or we would have missed half of that. Yeah, and you're right, Bob. It's that stimulation that comes along with it, right? How are you doing that? What challenges are you presenting to yourself? Heck, maybe, can I get through this box faster?
Yeah.
Right? Can I get these packages delivered quicker? Can I get through this? Are you listening to an audio book or a podcast and learning and stimulating yourself? Because that's going to help prevent burnout. Now, Bob, let's go to the other side. Burnout's here. Okay? It's here. So what happens when burnout shows up? What are some of those things that happen?
I mean, I think the first thing would be your productivity just goes down.
Sure.
Like whatever you're doing, if you don't even care to be doing it, obviously you're not going to be doing it at as high of a level as you're capable of when you're engaged in it and you're passionate. So, I mean, that'd be the first thing that happens, Chad, is your productivity drops.
Got it. Next.
Well, most people that withdraw like that there's this element of like negativity to that, and that is contagious. It really is. Like, I think that negativity can spread, and if left unchecked for too long, like it can spread across like the entire team and potentially the organization, but definitely the team, and that, or what that negative attitude starts to do is it starts to create friction. It might not spread, right? Jimmy might still be like, hey, I'm still happy to be here. But now I'm looking over at Chad and I'm like, look at him. He's negative. And now it starts to create animosity between people. It's a wrecker of like a team environment.
That's a great point, Bob. How about that you miss opportunities because you're not even looking anymore? You've got your head down. I mean, burnout almost literally will have us looking down and not making eye contact and not listening and just going through those motions, as we've talked about. You might miss opportunities for another a promotion, a challenge that would re-engage you, anything that might be coming along like that. Yeah. So that's another thing that happens. And then, Bob, here's a big one, and this is probably where burnout is the biggest killer. It comes home with you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even though burnout usually comes from work. Now, I'm not saying anything, but there are some people who are burned out at home. They're going through the motions. They're emotionally withdrawing. They can be sitting there and saying, wait, that's me and my partner, right? That's me and what's going on. Most of the time, burnout is related to something that's happening at work. And then the challenge is we bring that attitude home, and now we start to disconnect at home as well.
I don't think there's any question. I've definitely been guilty of that at times in my life.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
so, Bob, let's go the other way.
We all have.
Let's prevent it. Let's help our audience be winners. So they're going to identify burnout now. They know what to look for. They know what it looks like. They know why they need to avoid it. Give us some ways, Bob, that we can prevent burnout from happening.
I think that one of the best ways really is to find purpose in your job.
Mm.
I my wife has she's asked me this before. Don't you get bored of what you do? And I think if I got bored of what I did, like it would be easier for me to burn out. And she hears a certain aspect of my day, right? Which is like this coaching and training, and I train real estate teams. But
Right.
what she doesn't understand is, and she does, but when she asked me this question, I don't think that I had connected the dots for her well enough. But what she didn't understand is, like, I have an immense amount of purpose in what I do, and our mission is delivering the dream of home ownership inside of the company that I work kind of day to day in. And my role in that, Chad, is training our real estate teams on how to do that more times this year. And like, I'm super passionate about home ownership. I know what it meant for my family when my mom bought her first home, and that was like the place that we put down roots, and it's still to this day the place I called home. Even though I only lived there for 2 years myself, my family was there for a number of years. But so like finding purpose in what you do is to me one of the biggest things you can do to prevent burnout. So I think of like the mail carrier. Like, what's the purpose? If I was that mail carrier, I'd be thinking to myself, every check, every grandma's letter that I dropped off, like, think about how much joy I could potentially be bringing people through the mail. Like, you'd have to find some purpose that made you want to get up and drop that mail into the slot again the next day, right? And I don't know, in my head, I'd be wrapping it around like, wow, think about what I'm like. I might be given a letter from somebody's grandma to a young child that hasn't seen their grandma in 15 years. And I would probably build stories to kind of build up that purpose of what my work was really, meant.
That's a great point, Bob. Sometimes we have to build those stories in our own mind, which will give that purpose to what we're doing when it's not clear what the purpose is. Obviously, home ownership, sure, I'm helping somebody get their first home, or I'm helping somebody move up to where they're going to raise their kids, or I'm helping somebody afford something that works better for their lifestyle so they're not up to their eyes in alligators with bills because of it. You can see that. Or coaching, obviously when there's success on the other end, or in the health industry, obviously we see people lose. But you're right, there are plenty of industries and occupations out there that you have to find your own purpose and make sure you have that. And it might be in coming up with some of those stories. Give us another way to prevent burnout, Bob. Take us through this as the guy who knows how to prevent it, because you do such a great job of some of these things. Give us a way.
Hold on. I just skipped to the end. I see the list, Chad. And if you're talking about like my go-to method, I just
No, I'm talking. Take us through this list. But obviously, the last one I know is your strength zone.
I'm just kidding. How about giving? Like just and really with no expectation of anything in return. I think there's a lot of power in like lifting other people up through giving, whatever that is. And we've actually done an episode on giving, Chad, right? Where I don't know if you know what you're like the episode Rolodex guy. But we did an episode like, it doesn't have to be money, it doesn't have to be things, right? It could be giving your time or giving your knowledge, or but just giving to others is a great way to like fill the tank.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. And
now the next one is
wait, hang on a sec, Bob, because you
okay.
put me on the spot. I got to respond to that. Season 2, episode 10.
Okay.
Right? Win through giving, where we talk about the 5 levels of giving. So yes, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily go and give somebody cash. There are ways to give which will help you prevent burnout for yourself.
Hey, one of the ways, I'll tell a quick story. We had a company at one point called Active Rain. You're very familiar with it, Chad. But for those of you that aren't, it was a social network for real estate agents, and it was out prior to Facebook. So it was like we had this community of real estate agents, and there was a point where we had like 4 employees, and we had like 40,000 real estate agents on this platform. And like, I'd come into work every day. I don't know how I ended up in this role, right? There's 4 of us that like kind of co-founded the company. I was like on the support desk. Like I was answering support tickets, and I'd walk into work every day. There'd be like 500. It never ended. I'd go to bed. I'd leave at night. There were still 500. Like it literally never ended. And one of the things that I would do, and this became for me, like over the course of my career, especially at Active Rain, it was like just a bedrock principle. Every single day, I would find somebody in our community that looked like they could use the help, but had not actually sent in a support ticket. And I would just like call and reach out to them. I'd just be like, "Hey, how you doing? This is Bob Stewart at Active Rain. I saw that you'd left a comment somewhere or said something, and I thought maybe you'd be interested in spending 15 or 20 minutes with me, and I could help you with that thing." And like those people, by the way, would be like floored. And my co-founder Jonathan and I kind of had came up with this idea. We're like, what if we could like create one raving fan every single day? That's why we started doing it. We just wanted to create one raving fan every day. And we were like, if we did that like in 3 years, we could look back and we'd have like 700 people that like thought we were amazing and just totally went out of our way. But what?
Hang on, Bob. Hang on. You're the math major.
Well,
how can you tell me one a day and it's going to take you 3 years to get to 700?
Well, because I take breaks. Number 6. We haven't got there yet. Right? I didn't work every day, 365 days. I mean, actually, back then it would have been more than 700. We were working a lot of days, but
sure you were.
But the byproduct of that, like, so we kind of set out to do it as this, like, we could create raving fans. But what it actually did for me is it gave me this like incredible amount of energy because these people were like so thankful for that interaction where I had just kind of given, right?
Right.
So like that, I really believe that one thing I did like allowed me to go for years in that role and in that company without burning out, where I think a lot of other people would have burned out. I mean, it was an aggressive, it was all hands on deck, 24 hours a day type of a thing for a long time. But that every day I got that like that lift of energy from giving.
There you go. Preventing burnout. Let me take number 3 here, Bob.
Please.
I think this is in my wheelhouse. I see this on your list as I'm looking at it with you as you're taking us through it. Number 3, exercise, because exercise is going to build endorphins, which give us energy. And exercise is going to also help us sleep better. And if we can sleep better, we're obviously going to have more energy, which is going to help us with that whole burnout situation. I won't get into it too much. We have plenty of episodes on the 15-Point Plan podcast where we're talking about your energy levels and your health. Come on over there. Check out what Jolene and I are talking about at 15pointplan.com, or just get the 15-Point Plan podcast wherever you are. But exercise, Bob, because it does some great stuff. Take me to the next one on your list.
Control your time. And in fact, Chad, I think, and guys, like in spirit of full disclosure, we like record these podcasts and they end up getting dropped, days. Sometimes we sit on them for a week or 2 or 5. I think in the future, and it might have been in the past when this one gets dropped, but at some point right around this episode, we're going to do an episode with you, Chad, like a really powerful episode on like controlling your time and kind of how do you set a calendar? What does that even look like? And how do you actually control your time? But number 4 would be control your time.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that Dave makes you look good and we don't put it in the past so that it's still coming. It'll be in the next few episodes since Dave controls that. All right. How about this one under that kind of, Bob? I'll say eliminate stuff that isn't necessary. How much of our work that we do doesn't need to get done, right?
Yeah.
Or could be done by somebody else so we could focus on the important stuff so we don't feel like we're going through that hamster wheel of just going around and around and around and not getting anywhere with your 500 help tickets that came in every day. Sometimes you got to eliminate some of those help tickets. There was probably one answer you could have given 100 people at once and eliminate a lot of that work so that you could focus on the things.
Eliminate work that isn't necessary. The other thing I would say is like work, and this is such a cliche, but like work smarter. And I'll give you an example related back to the support ticket fiasco, right? Where every day there'd be 5. Like what you would see these themes, right? So then eventually instead of like responding with an answer to those themes, you'd create like a blog post that answered that question, and then you just respond with a link, and then you could go in and find the 30 that all have that theme, and then you just so you create these like you work more efficiently, and sometimes it would be like you just be like, you know what, I'm not even going to answer that one because I know that was an issue, but we fixed it, and I'm sure that person's fine now, and so you might just respond, hey, I think you're good, but yeah. I think the control your time and eliminate work that isn't necessary are oftentimes really related, because oftentimes that work that isn't necessary is other people's priorities for you. And we talk about this all the time on Win, Make, Give, right? And the more you can control your time, the more you can eliminate work that isn't necessary. Number 6.
Now, Bob, there's one more on your list. There's one more on your list, and this is a you for sure. What is it?
Yeah, this is a take breaks, man. Take breaks. And that might be, again, we kind of started at the top with like, that might be taking breaks throughout the day. That might be, that extra hour or two that you get away with from the kids with your wife once a week, right? That might be once a month you get away for a little staycation, or obviously that might be a couple times a year you get away for like a real, totally unplug vacation. But breaks are super important for avoiding burnout.
Okay. So I want to bring you this quote that I found, Bob, as I was going through some burnout when you said that you wanted to talk about this one today. And it came from, and I figured this would catch Dave's ear as he's listening to our podcast. It came from Michael Gungor, who's also known as Vinshu Das, who's a singer, songwriter, producer. He might actually even know who that is. That's not in my wheelhouse. But Michael said, burnout is what happens when you try to avoid being human for too long. Right? When we try to become a robot, when we try to become something that's just not being human for too long, we're not connecting with people, whatever that is, that's when burnout ends up settling in and becoming a thing.
Yeah, robots have no purpose. I mean, I guess they're programmed for like some objective or something, but they don't really have purpose, right? Machines can't have purpose.
They don't have purpose.
I love that. That's a great quote.
Gang, take that quote. Take the lessons Bob shared. Go on a vacation like Bob does, right? We don't want burnout to happen to you, so stop attempting to be human. Because here's the good thing. You can take the Win, Make, Give podcast on vacation with you. That's right. While you're on the beach, you could be listening to Bob and I and Ben talk about this, or interviewing one of our great guests, or some opportunity that Win, Make, Give can present to you. So we hope that you remember to take these breaks. We hope you remember to get those workouts in, and you can make the Win, Make, Give podcast a part of that experience so you can be stimulating your brain at the same time. Folks, share this episode with the friend of yours that you know is experiencing burnout, or you see on the path to burnout, but you don't want to be the one to say something. Maybe just tell them there was a great episode that they should check out. And then,
I mean, they'll put it together.
No, they might not.
A real moron. They'll put it together.
Well, now they will. Now that you said that for them, they might not have before that. But then bring those people into our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Win, Make, Give, where we keep the conversation going so that we can help you continue to avoid burnout. Bob, we are glad you have recovered from the burnout you were starting to experience with your vacation. And we are even more glad that you are back from that vacation here with us. So, folks, until our next episode, remember, as always, do good.